Biblical Shemitah consists of two parts. There's Shemitah's Karka and there's Shemitah's Ksafim. Shemitah's Karka refers to the land, all the rules pertaining to the land in terms of letting it lie fallow, making sure that everybody has equal access, including the animals. And then there's Shemitah's Ksafim, which refers to money, to finances, which basically requires us that on Shemitah, we have to let go of all the loans and not collect money owed to us. In the Torah, both of these Shemitot are treated equally. The Torah obligates a field owner with Shemitah Karka and also obligates a lender with Shemitah Ksafim. When we get to the Mishnah, that's not the case. The primary focus of the Mishnah is Shemitah's Karka. That's what 8/9 or 9/10 even of Masechet Shevi'it is focused on. And then towards the end, there's a short conversation, a short discussion about Shemitah Ksafim, which is kind of surprising because according to many opinions, in fact, Shemitah Karka is limited to Eretz Israel, whereas Shemitah Ksafim applies even in Chutz La'aretz. In the 12th, 13th century, there was a big debate between the Rosh and other of his contemporaries in Spain, but for the most part, many opinions are that Shemitah Ksafim applies even today and even outside of Israel, according to quite a few opinions. So it is noteworthy that that gets the least attention in the Mishnah. What's even more surprising, though, is that the very first Perek of the Masechet does not address the halachot of Shemitah at all. That only happens when you get into the second, third, and fourth Perek of the Masechet. Instead, the first Perek of Masechet Shevi'it focuses on a secondary law pertaining to Shevi'it, which is called Tosfot Shevi'it. Tosfot Shevi'it basically tells us that in addition to the seventh year, where we are prohibited from doing all the things that the Torah doesn't allow us to do it on the seventh year, there's a notion of Tosfot Shevi'it, which requires us to actually, in some cases, in some instances, for certain kind of produce, start the observance of Shemitah 30 days earlier, in some cases even earlier than that. The notion of that you can tag on to Shemitah, or you have to tag on to Shemitah a certain amount of time, Tosfot Shevi'it. And that's mostly what the first Perek is focused on. The first Perek is really discussing the intricacies and the details of that rule of Tosfot Shevi'it. Now, any learner of Mishnah, anybody who studies Mishnah, notices that and can help wonder, why is this the kickstart? Why is this the opener of the Masechet? Shouldn't the Masechet have instead first focused on the primary laws of Shemitah and then moved into the secondary, tertiary rules pertaining to the seventh year? But I thought it could be actually that there's a deeper message in the fact that the Masechet starts with the secondary rule of Tosfot Shevi'it, because the Mishnah is appealing to everybody, people who live in Israel for whom Shevi'it is relevant, and people who live outside of Israel for whom practically Shevi'it as it pertains to the land is not relevant. Shemitah's Karka definitely does not apply to Eretz Israel. So one might wonder, why bother? Why is Shevi'it relevant for us, especially those who live in the diaspora, those who live outside of Israel, when it's not pertaining to us, when it's not relevant to us? But I think that that's the message of the first Perek, talking about Tosfot Shevi'it, which is meant to echo Tosfot Shabbos. The idea that not only do we keep Shabbos for the 24 hours of Shabbos itself, but we also add a certain amount of time, whether it's a few minutes or a longer time. We kind of try to extend the Shabbat to make the message, to convey the message that Shabbat is so special, Shabbat is so important, that we actually embrace the Shabbos prior to its arrival. And I think perhaps there's the subtle message in the first paragraph of Shevi'it, the discussion of Tosfot Shevi'it, to kind of convey to us that we are also active agents in Shemitah. We're not just passive participants. When the seventh year comes, we let our land lie fallow, but in fact, we can add to the seventh year somewhat and be actively contributing to the Shemitah year. And the much broader consequential message of that is that even though the practicals of Shemitah perhaps might not apply in Chutz La'aretz, we might not have karka, and therefore no mitzvah atliyut ba'aretz apply to non-Israeli karka, the message, the ethos, and the spirit of Shemitah applies even outside of Israel. Care of the other, making sure that people are taken care of the land, those are considerations that behoove us, even those of us outside of Eretz Israel, to apply ourselves and keep.